Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about het influence in ball pythons. So obviously I've got a recessive animal as my helper because a het is a snake which is heterozygous for a recessive gene. So it's got one copy of the gene, and generally we say that the normal pattern masks that gene. So the genes such as piebald, albino, clown, ghost, etc. we say that gene is in recess. It's absent for a generation. Well, and that's how, textbooks describe it and how I often describe it. And, guilty as charged. It's not always that simple. It's more of a, it's more of a blurred lines kind of definition. Yes, it does go into recess, but what you find with ball pythons especially is that there is het influence. So heterozygous animals, they do show different characteristics. They show characteristics of almost like incomplete dominance with what people now call incomplete dominant genes that we used to call codominant, and there's a whole argument around that. But basically, why I want to talk about this subject for this video is because if you're a small breeder and you're doing some projects, or even if you just find it interesting and you do one or two clutches and you want to learn about how genes work, it's really interesting to try and figure out how to spot hets rather than just do genetic testing, which is, let's face it, expensive at the moment. You can look at your animals and you can try to tell if they are hets just by picking up on clues. Even though the babies of most of these recessive genes look almost identical to normal animals, it is possible to pick up on the het influence. And this is especially true when they're mixed in with other genes. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to some of my hatchlings from late last year, I think, that are all, what were they, het for clown, possible het for clown, or het for albino. Some of them are het for clown and albino. And we're going to look at how they differ from either normal ball pythons or their original, morph, or the other morphs that are combined with them, for example. And then after that, we're going to go to Morphmarket. We're going to look at some other cool hets and some really weird examples of stuff that you can do with hets from the big breeders across the pond over in the US. So let's head over and have a look quickly. So as you can see, we've got a few different snakes from a few different clutches here. They're all from sort of late summer 2023, and they all have het clown, possible het clown, or het for albino in them. So we're going to take a look through and just see if we can see kind of the clues that help you to identify hets if you don't want to go through the process of getting shed testing for a handful of snakes and adding all that extra cost and effort into your year's plans. So I'm going to try and keep them under control. They are pretty lively. They fed a couple of days ago, but they obviously are ready for a larger meal size and they're going to keep trying to escape. So I'm just going to try and get through this without them escaping or biting. Well, I don't mind the biting so much, but escaping I do mind. So see if I can get them out. First of all is a female, normal, 100% het for clown, 100% het for albino, or albino as you say in the US. And what we're seeing mostly with her is het clown influence. So there's a few things to pick up on here. The first thing is that for a normal, she is quite bright, she's quite colourful. She's got these light patches along the edges of the saddles, the alien heads as a lot of people call them, and those light patches are quite bright. Some normals do have these anyway, but they are quite bright and they're coming quite far up the side. There's that nice bit of white and kind of pixelated area there as well. Sorry, I've got to get these under control. There's a few trying to escape at the same time. And so there's just that general brightness up the sides. There's also a lot of keyholes within the alien heads. And I'm going to say a very slightly more varied, kind of jumbled up pattern compared to a normal. And that's reasonably striking, but it doesn't give you enough to say, I'm going to identify that as a het unless you know the parents for sure. So what else have we got? We've also got this stripe that goes through the eye there, down to the jaw, and that connects, they're getting wound up, that connects to the pattern along the top of the labial scales there. So we've got this weird kind of connect down there, and that's another, pretty common sign Unfortunately, I'm going to have to close you guys in. This is typical of babies this age. Whenever there isn't food, they just don't want to come out. They're saying, why have you got me out if there's no food? Anyway, back to the topic. So you can see there's that bit of head pattern. There's these light areas coming up the sides, and there's a lot of keyholes. And then what really gives it away is you do get this again. Rarely you get this in normals, but this is quite a good sign of a het. You turn her over and she's got this amazing cream belly all the way down. The dark pattern from the center is gone. It's got this very light white or cream coloration all along the belly. I can't believe how well she's behaving now either. And that is just, if you compare it to another normal hatchling, it is way brighter, way brighter. You've got this overall lightness and this amazing cream belly. Again, without shed testing or genetic testing, as I should call it, there's not 100% evidence ever if you don't know what the parents are, but that's pretty good clue. I mean, this is pretty bright and amazing looking compared to a normal one. Anyway, next up, let's go for the acid guys. Whoop. Come on. Okay, so this is a normal acid, which I am going to say is probably, he's a possible het for clown, but I'm going to say he's probably het for clown. And on top, the dorsal pattern is very typical of your average acid or confusion or static, whatever you want to call the gene. It's all the same. So that's pretty normal. He's got that nice pattern, the bubbles, all of that you see in regular acids. However, on his head, he's got this diffused light head stamp all over the top of the head. Often with acids that don't have het influence, you see a nice defined head stamp in the middle, whereas this guy just has general weird light patches all over the top of his head. So that's a clue right there, another clue. Also, when you turn him over, he's got dark markings on the belly, like you expect from an acid, but all the way down, they're absent from the very center of the ventral scales, like a stripe of patternless area down the center of the belly. And acids vary a lot, so that's not enough to be conclusive, but when you notice that this pattern's all gone here, that is a good sign that it is probably het clown influence. Sometimes some other hets can do this, but I think personally this is possible het clown. I'm going to say he probably is a het clown acid. So on this guy, really there's only two little clues. If you can pick up on them though, it does still help. It's still, well, if you're not doing shed testing, it's still a pretty good way. So, on to the next acid. They're all getting so impatient now. At least I know they're healthy. So, this next one is an acid pastel, possible het for clown. He's pretty jumpy, he's pretty hungry and quite annoyed now as well. Even though you can't always tell with ball pythons when they're annoyed. Anyway, a lot of acid pastels look a lot like this. The only thing you'll notice with this guy is he's got a lot of blotches within his alien heads, a lot of jumbled up bitty pattern like here, and you get that to a certain extent on acid pastels anyway, but he's got a lot of it all over the body. Okay, and he's also got quite a dark head, so he does seem a bit darker than a regular acid pastel. And with this guy, that's your first clue. Not a huge clue, but it is a clue if you're used to, the morph and you compare it to a regular acid pastel. And then again, this guy, we go to the belly. Look at his belly. He is, he's just got a white belly in the center again, but even more so than the one I just showed you all the way down. And most acid pastels, they do actually have quite a lot of patterning, like almost a leopardy kind of belly. And they will have patterning in the center as well, a lot of the way down. So that is another, this absence of pattern there, that's another clue that I think we're seeing het clown influence. So this is another one that I'm going to say he probably is het clown. Again, not a lot of clues to go on, but they are clues that you can pick up on, especially if you've got several. Sorry if I'm knocking the camera, by the way, everyone. This is a bit of a tricky setup I've got going here. These guys don't really want to cooperate too much either. So the next guy we've got is 100%. Come on. Don't want to shut anyone's head in it. The next guy we've got is giving us some really interesting het influence. What's really annoying about him is actually he's got a tiny bit of stuck shed on his neck. That is annoying me. But never mind, back to the video. So this guy is a 100% het clown, 100% albino, normal acid. There's no other genes, but you'll see a few just kind of weird things on him. So he's got these double blotchy bits of pattern here. See these unusual type. There's a cut between the top of the pattern and the bottom of the pattern. And you see that, you see it up here as well. And you see that with various morphs when there is het clown involved. And that's a pretty good het clown clue. Again, it's not always conclusive, but when you look at that there, and you look at the one I showed you down here, that is a pretty good solid clue. And then you move on to the head, and he's got a patch, I think it's a slight patch of paradox on top of his head there. And he's got a really bright, unusually shaped head stamp, which is, sometimes it happens on regular acids, but this time it's pretty unusual, especially having the paradox within the head stamp. And then when you look at the stripe behind the eye, it joins up with the pattern down on the jaw, like on the one I showed you earlier, but it also goes around the back of the head. He's been really good as well, really behaved. It goes around the whole head and almost joins again. So it's got this really funky all-around pattern, and that is often something you see with hets. So this guy, I mean, I know for sure he's a 100% het, but even if I didn't know for sure, I'd see this guy and I would say, yeah, that's definitely a het or something going on, because that is quite unusual for just a normal acid. His pattern is also kind of reduced compared to some acids. Funnily enough though, when you turn him over and look at his belly, that's like a regular acid's belly. So that clue on this guy is absent, but there are other clues there. So this is kind of like an investigative process you go through with your hatchlings, and it's really up to you to take a good look. Like I say, if you don't want to pay a lot of money for shed testing, if you've got 4, 5, 6 projects going, this is kind of the way to go. Do your investigations and kind of hone your skills when it comes to recognizing this stuff. Fortunately, these guys they're getting more well behaved as the video goes on. It's a shame because we're at the last one now. Anyway, now we're moving to a good old classic. Okay, I've got a situation on my hands now. Come on, back in. Again, I'm trying really hard not to squash anyone. So we've got a good old classic here, which is a pastel 100% het clown. And pastels vary in their brightness. You get very bright ones, you get very muddy ones. But this guy, you look at him and you can tell he is darker than your average pastel, but he's also got more intense colour. He almost looks orange on the sides. He's got the pattern on the back of his head joining up again, which can or cannot happen with pastels. But he's got such an amazing, just rich colour. You know, that is more intense than your average pastel, even if it's not as bright in tone. It's deeper and richer in intensity. So he's a really, really beautiful snake. But also when you look at him, if I can get him to show you his dorsal patterning, you can see there's these odd swirly bits of pattern. But there's also saddles or alien heads or whatever you want to call them. I hear people call them something different every day. Joining up across the back. See that? They're joining up like bands across the back. And often in a regular pastel you don't always see that. And that's a really good sign of het clown being in there. And this is a good example because I know for sure this one is het clown. So that is a great example of het influence with an incomplete dominant gene like pastel, which some people still like to call codom, but that's a whole other argument. So anyway, there's a rundown of my favourite hets from this year, and ones that I think are hopefully going to give you some good examples of what to look for. So let's head back and have a look on Morphmarket, see some examples from some big breeders to see what they've been up to. Okay, now we're back in the room. As you can see, there's all these kind of little clues you can pick up on, and if you're a small breeder, you know, sometimes this is the way to go rather than spend even more money on shed testing, genetic testing, when you could be spending your money on enrichment ideas like fake plants, ornaments. You'd be spending it on food, quite frankly. That's always a really big cost. So there's no harm in always having at least one normal in your collection. I've got one adult male normal that I always keep, and just learning how to recognize hets. It's a fun thing to do, and it is useful if you're doing projects. But now let's have a look on Morphmarket at some other weird kind of het stuff. So let's take a look now. First up, we've got this leopard triple het for clown, pied, and hypo. This guy was produced by Redline Pythons out of Los Angeles, California. And what you can see first with this guy is that, or this girl actually, it's a female. Even for a leopard, sorry about the chair squeaking by the way, even for a leopard, this snake has kind of jumbled up pattern. There's a lot of sort of disruptive patterning within the spots and the dorsal blotches and, what you'd usually call the alien heads, etc. And I completely agree if any of you said, well, you know what, you can get normal leopards that look like this. And sometimes you can. The patterning on leopards varies quite a lot. Sometimes it's quite busy, sometimes it's really subdued so much that you have a hard time IDing leopards. It does vary a lot. But if you had this snake, obviously this is an extreme case, but if you compared this snake to a bunch of other leopards, what you might find is that the others had less busy pattern, less disrupted pattern, less of these swirly things that you can see in a couple places going on. And that would be a good clue that there is het here. Obviously this person knows for sure it's a het, but even if it was just you were looking, say, for het clown on its own, you'd still have that clue in the pattern. So again, I'm not telling you stuff that's 100% definitive. This is like just little investigations you can do, and it takes a little bit of judgment and reasoning and kind of visual skills. I don't know if that's a term. So after that, we've got this one, and like I always say, if you don't know about Will Banks' captive bred reptiles, I would recommend taking a look. Mike Wilbanks has been producing amazing ball python morphs for a long time. He knows how to make quality combinations, and this is quite a serious investment snake he's made here. This is a triple het desert ghost clown pied ball python. So technically speaking, it's a normal. It's supposed to look like a normal, but you can already see, like on the head, it's got the pattern that goes to the back of the head going down and joining the pattern on the jaw, just like I showed you on my babies. It's got some blotching within the dorsal patterning. It's got some banding. You can see kind of midway down the snake, there's two of the blotches joined together in a band across the top, like I showed you on that pastel het clown earlier. And it's got a nice dark, rich color, nice head stamp, and you can just tell, if you compare that to some normals, you will notice that in this snake there's something going on. It's just, it's something you can pick up on. That's pretty easy. It's actually a really cool looking snake, to be honest. Next up, we have, I'm going to say it's a fairly new morph and quite a cool one actually. So this is a Krypton het for pied, produced by New England Reptile Distributors, one of the first, big ball python breeders who've made a lot of new morphs and all kinds of stuff over the years. I think the bald gene originated with them. But anyway, a Krypton het pied is not a visual of any particular recessive gene. We're going to ignore the pied part for now because what we're interested in is the Krypton part. A Krypton is a morph on itself, in of itself, I meant to say, and it's what you get when you cross. You add het cryptic and het clown in the same snake, you get a Krypton. Again, cryptic and clown, neither of them, they're both recessive genes, neither of them are expressed in this snake, but just for het influence makes you a morph. Now, obviously I'm going a bit off topic here because you're not going to struggle to identify one of these in a clutch. And I was talking about het influence, but it's a very cool thing. So I just want to take it a bit further and just show you, exactly what you can do with het influence and the real, good proof that het influence is a thing, as it were. So finally, last but certainly not least, something you really wouldn't have trouble identifying is a Candino. And a Candino, again, it doesn't have a visually expressed recessive morph. It is two heterozygous copies of two different morphs combining to have this co-dominant / incomplete dominant effect. I don't know what you'd call it. I guess you'd call it co-dominance in this case because they're both being expressed. And in this case, it makes a wonderful kind of halfway between albino and banana kind of looking snake. And it's an amazing morph. And again, it's just two het genes combined and having this co-dominant effect. And that is really cool. This one, by the way, was produced by BN Exotics out of Boynton Beach, Florida. So props to them for producing cool snakes and making nice photos on nice backgrounds. I always like seeing that on Morphmarket. So we've seen some of my hets, and then we've seen some really cool stuff as well that people have produced on Morphmarket. And as you can see, I would like to say at this point, shed testing is great. But the reason I've done this video is because, you know, shed testing is still expensive. Here in the UK, I think at the time of this video, it's still around £50. I think that's going to be something like $70 in the US. The price will come down. I mean, in the US, there's probably more people doing shed testing and it'll probably come down more quickly. So, you know, maybe in a couple of years' time, shed testing will be much more accessible. But still, at this point, if you've got 5 projects lined up, you know, do you want to spend an extra 5 times 50 on shed testing, an extra £250 or whatever that would be in dollars? That could be something, you know, anywhere up to $375, who knows? And do you want to do that, or do you want to learn to recognize hets yourself? Me, I don't really make any profit from my breeding because whenever I do, I just buy a new snake or I just spend it on, you know, enclosures and stuff like that. I'm probably not very business minded. So I do like to save on some stuff, and I enjoy the process of trying to identify hets and the gambling involved, if you like. So, you know, it's good. It's good to learn both ways. Shed testing, if it's a really big, very, very expensive project, that can be good for selling the babies, because some people, you know, if they pay an investment level price, they might want proof in the shed test. So it's always a good idea, but, you know, do both, learn both if you can. And just before I end this video, I just want to say I've had Snakey here the whole time, and you might notice, see that backbone? He is looking scrawny. It's breeding season. He's very upset that I haven't let him breed this year. He wants to get to the ladies. He's eating less. He's active. Yesterday he was even squeezing my arm and, you know, wanting to have a wrestling match. I suspect he also wants to get out and fight the other males. But he is totally fine. His feeding will pick up in a few months when he realizes, you know, things have changed, breeding season passed. Worst case scenario for him, I move him into a different room so he can't smell the ladies much. Other than that, perfect health. You know, this is just what adult ball pythons are like. The males really want to breed. If they can't breed, they get upset. So, as always, I hope that was an informative video that will give you some tips and hopefully, you know, some stuff that you'll find helpful. But if there's anything else you'd like to add, anything you'd like to let me know about, or any topics you'd like to see in future videos, please do get in touch and comment. And as always, please do like and subscribe. Thank you very much.